Today we're in the workshop. It's freezing outside. The sun's out, but we've got a strong wind from the east, so you don't want to stand out in the open for very long. But we've been doing some thinning in the woods, and this 023 started using quite a lot of chain oil, and there was quite a lot of smoke coming out from round this exhaust. And I know what the problem is, but it's time to do some maintenance, and we'll go through it. So I've got the workshop stove going to make things a bit more pleasant. And first thing, take the side case off. Now always undo it at the back here. Never undo it that way, because if you got your cover off, you got your knuckles straight into your chain. So let's have the side case nuts off. I'm just taking these off to improve access to everything. Oh, that's pretty filthy. So, as we're all aware, that's your clutch, and listen to that. I'd say that bearing needs a bit of grease. Okay, so let's just have a brief look in there. Always use a bit of cloth here so it doesn't go flying everywhere, especially if you're in the woods. Circlip, washer, sprocket, bit of wood. So we can grease that bearing at some point. And I'm just trying to find the drive quill for the oil pump. I can see it there, just sticking out. It doesn't look too bad. So I'll need to clean all that area. But the next thing to do, because I know we've got an oil leak from behind here, is to take the exhaust off. Now if the exhaust hasn't been off for a while, you've got to be careful. Okay, because the bolts can shear off. So if they're all rusty and horrible, give them a wire brush up and give them a soak in diesel or something like that, or one of the proprietary anti-seize sort of things. But give them a soak for an hour or so. There's no rush here. Okay, and if you snap these bolts off, then you'll have to go off trying to find another bolt. And you'll see how they work in a minute. So I've got one of these Husky tools, and now I have loosened these off before, and the last time I put them together I put copper slip on there. So, but they still feel a bit tight, so don't just go raunching them off. Bit of backwards and forwards. A minute extra spent here will save you quite a lot of time. They get awful hot and they get awful wet and damp, so they're bound to get tight and full of corrosion. Hopefully, can't really see what's going on, so there we go. Just keep easing them round. It's all too easy to snap these off. Right, that feels better. Where did that go? Don't ask me. Right, take this cover off and the exhaust off. It doesn't want to come off. There we go. Right, let's have a look in there. Okay, that's the exhaust off. In the bottom there is the heat shield, which has to be the right way round, with the curve facing the cylinder. Okay, and then you have the gasket, and then if you notice, the bolts themselves just fit in that slot. It's a brilliant idea, and because it's got a hex head, it locks solid, and when you've got the heat shield on, they can't go outwards. Excellent. So now we're looking, and I know what it is. You see that hole there? That's part of the oil gallery, and normally they're blocked up. But here's another saw, and as you could see there, that little oil gallery is has got a bung in it. So what we need to do on this one is put a short screw in there of the appropriate size. Now the hole's fairly deep, but the screw doesn't need to be that long. A little grub screw would be ideal. I'm going to have a look in my box of assorted bits and see if I can find something suitable. The problem with this was it was smoking out the exhaust and using a lot of chain oil. And of course it was just pumping oil out through that hole. Take 4. So I'm just looking down the hole that we've discovered, and the oil feed from the pump is right down the bottom of this hole. It's quite deep, but then the feed to the bar I suspect is quite near the top, and it faces this way here. So let's just got a bit of wire. There it is. It's only about 1/4 of an inch down. That little hook just dropped in the hole. So the bolt doesn't need to be too long, or else it will block that hole up, and then you won't get any oil feed at all, and we know what happens then. So a little short grub screw or something, or a bit of round plastic the right size to knock in there, or even perhaps get the right thing. So I found a bit of bolt and cut a slot in the end for a screwdriver, and then cut 1/4 of an inch or so off it, and if the camera will focus, which it won't, there it is, screwed in there, and it's short enough so that it won't block the bar feed hole. And I measured this bolt and it works out at 5.7 mil. So it's not a metric bolt, but that's the one that seems to fit quite nicely. Ground a very fine taper on the start, so it started easy, and it threaded in there without busting that plastic housing. So I think that job's done. It's down to putting everything back together and testing it. So just put a dab of copper slip on there, and that other nut, I don't know where it went, but these are 5 mil. It went walkabout somewhere, might turn up. I wandered a magnet across the floor and not found it. Who can tell? These want to be reasonably tight. If they've been quite rusty and you can take them out, then just take the bolts out and give them a good wide brushing up. You don't want an exhaust that's loose and rattling. Not because of the noise of the rattle, but it's letting the exhaust bypass, or the exhaust gases bypass the exhaust, so there's a bit less back pressure. Not that there's a lot with these, but there's some, which of course means that you will be affecting your mixture and probably using more fuel, and the fact that when it's rattling it's vibrating and it will crack up, damage things, damage the face where the exhaust fits the head, all those sorts of things. So having cleaned all this lot up all the way around here, make sure that there's nothing stopping the chain brake bands from going back fully, retracting fully, and this area here is very important to be clean because that's where the bar goes, and of course this is where the oil comes out, that hole there. This chain brake I'm not very happy with. I think the retaining spring's broken. It should self-center and it's just flopping about, so I'm going to have to deal with that. But before we do that, let's put this lot back together. Okay, it's mostly clean. Bearing goes on there. I mean, there's no point being scrupulously clean here because it's going to get filthy almost instantly. And one of the 026 rebuild videos, there's a huge rant about these bearings. It's very important that they're greased regularly, okay, or else you'll get chain creep and the bearing will wear, and it'll wear the end of this crankshaft as well, just where the bearing runs. Now there are some people who say it's got a plastic cage, so therefore it doesn't need lubing. Well, that's a pile of whatever, 9 feet deep, because the bearing is the bit that does the work, the needles, so therefore it's steel on steel, so it needs lubing. Now I've checked that the oil pump drive quill is intact, so I'm just going to grab hold of the camera and see if I can show you what I'm looking at. Can you see that there? That little shiny thing? Okay, that's the end of the drive quill. See there? And it extends beyond these clutch shoes. Okay? And it extends far enough to engage with the notch in the clutch drum. So let's just see, there's the notch, and the bearing has got grease on it, and you pop that in there like that and spin her around there, and it just dropped in. Yeah, so there's another way you can see where the quill is, and there's a line on there, so you can then line them up. If it's difficult to get the washer on or the circlip, then you haven't got the oil pump quill engaged with the notch. Then the washer, and then the circlip. And the way to prevent the circlip from going flying is you put the spanner over it, and then just push. And if it doesn't go over, it stays within the spanner. So there we are, all back together. I'll just sharpen the chain and then fill everything up and give it an oil test. Make sure we're not pouring oil everywhere and loads of smoke. Look at the 023 video series for more details about the oil pump, the clutch and the chain brake.